Finally, an Android box that doesn't suck. Hello, welcome to Retrocore and the Kinhank S Pro. Yes, this is an Android box that doesn't suck. Now, of course, being an Android box for your TV, you are going to be able to watch your movies and stream stuff and all that. But we're interested in the game capabilities of this device. And let me tell you, this one actually performs. According to the bold claims, it's 8K UHD. Well, I don't have an 8K TV, so I can't test that, but I can certainly attest to it being 4K. And it does actually have HDR10 on it. Yes, it does. So what do we get in the box? Well, we do get a couple of manuals. Now, the actual device itself has been taken out. I'll show you that in a moment. There's a quick preview there of the manual. And inside, we get quite a lot of nice goodies. So you can see here we've got a remote, we've got a power supply, we've got a braided HDMI cable, very nice indeed, and a SATA combined power cable. Now what could that be for, you may be wondering? Well, let's take a look at the actual device and we'll find out. So here's the actual device, and first impressions are not too bad. It's got a nice little bit of design on top of it, and we do have a ventilation hole there as well. On the front of the device, we've got the same logos that are on the box, but when we look at the inputs, this is where it gets interesting. Now, I should point out that inside here, we've got 64 gigabytes of internal storage and 8 gigabytes of memory. So it is certainly no slouch. In fact, I'll put the specs of this device up there. Now, looking at this side, you can see the SATA and power connection. That means you can connect a hard disk drive to this and store terabytes upon terabytes of data and stream it straight to this box into your TV. And that does include games. In fact, I'll show you it set up later on because I will be using a hard drive with this myself. Now, around the back of it, we've got some more options. We've got our power switch. We've got an Ethernet connection. It does have Wi-Fi as well enabled. USB-C, an optical digital audio out and HDMI out, and over here we have our headphone out and the DC in. Actually runs on 10 volts. And on this side we've got more I/O. We've got a micro SD card slot where you can also store your games and so on, and 3 USB 3s and a normal USB 2. So it's certainly equipped pretty well with I/O. Now, this version I got from Kinhank also came with a controller, and this is the controller it came with. This is a GameSir controller, which is 2.4 gigahertz. It even comes with a dongle. In fact, they gave me two. Here's another one. Now, as far as controllers go, it is a bit light, but it is very solid. It's not going to be twisting or bending. The analog sticks are reasonable. D-pad is your typical PlayStation style knockoff D-pad, but the buttons are responsive, and we do have the shoulder triggers on here as well. Plus we've got additional turbo fire options which you can assign to any button on the controller. Has an internal battery, and of course it's charged by USB-C. But not only did I get a controller with my Android TV box, but also a 4 terabyte hard drive. Yes, this was also included, and it's not some no-name drive. This is a Seagate Iron Wolf Pro 4 terabyte, and I did check the actual usage of this drive, and it is fairly decent. It's only had around about 200 hours worth of use, believe it or not, and this is jam-packed full of games, and this is what I'll be using to demonstrate the machine. So let's go and connect it up to the TV. So as you can see, I'm using a pretty janky setup here. Of course, when I set this up permanently, the hard drive will be nice and secure and will be tucked out of the way. In fact, I'll probably put it underneath the actual device itself. So let's jump straight into an actual video capture of this device, and I am running this in 4K. So upon switching it on, we get the Kinhank logo, and we just wait here for about 30 seconds while the whole system boots up. Once we get to the boot up sequence, we get our little Android animation. And as you can see, that looks pretty crisp. And then straight into the front end. Now the front end is extremely snappy. It is not laggy at all. I was actually very surprised at how quick this front end reacts. So first thing we'll do is take a look into the options. Here you can see we've got our Wi-Fi enabled section, so we can connect to Wi-Fi. And of course we can also set up a hotspot and connect it to the Ethernet. Going into the device settings, you can see we've got a HDR10 set up there, and we can also put a 4K UI, but don't bother with that because it just messes everything up. We can also change the color temperature and various other options to our heart's content. Even got a couple of presets in there. So going into the audio section, as long as you've got the hardware to decode it, you can have many different effects. Dolby Digital, Digital Plus, True HD Dolby, DTS and DTS HD. Now I can confirm that they all work except Dolby Atmos because I don't have a Dolby Atmos setup. But if I did, I presume that would work as well. And taking a look at the storage, you can see we've got internal storage here of 64 gigabytes. Most of the internal storage is empty, giving us 50 gigabytes of free space, so that's plenty of space to put all your games onto. Well, as long as you're not putting PlayStation 2 games on there. On the hard drive, the 4TB hard drive, you can still see I've got over 200 gigabytes of free space on that as well. We've got advanced settings where you can change the default launcher, but to be honest, just keep it on the normal Android launcher. You'll be okay there. Okay, so onto this front end and the free spaces. In these free spaces, you can put any app you want, so you can access them without having to go into menus like I'm doing here. So basically, you just highlight one of the empty spaces, select an app, and there you go, it's in there. So we've just put Chrome in there, and in the other space we'll put Amazon Prime. And let's put one of the apps down in this little section here. I think we'll go with a bit of YouTube. Put a bit of YouTube in there. There we go. Now we've got two main sections here, which are Emulation Station and Pegasus. Basically, they are both front ends for the emulation. Although you can select RetroArch here from the main menu and go in there and configure everything. So everything's already set when you go into the front ends. But first of all, let's take a look at the Pegasus front end. Now it does take a little while to boot up, around about 30 seconds, so we'll just speed through all that right now. Okay, and as you can see we are now into the front end, and you may be thinking, oh man, look, it's got screenshots of all the games in there and that's gonna take forever to scroll through them all. Well, you'd be surprised. As I mentioned already, this is extremely snappy. This device is no slouch. Just watch how fast I can scroll through everything, and keep in mind that all these images are coming from the hard drive which is connected to it. As you can see, we've got a little bit of loading there, but it's certainly not laggy, is it? I'm going through those without any issues whatsoever. But what about emulation? Well, of course it's got to play all the old stuff really easily, but can it really handle PlayStation 2? Well, I think we're about to find out. Okay, so here we are running PlayStation 2 and Tekken 5. And as you can see, this is working absolutely perfectly. Now I'm going to keep the frame counter on in the corner for most of these games so you can see how well they run.
Final round. Fight!
Okay, so let's test out another PlayStation 2 game.
Introducing a new cola, kids. And this one is...
Okay, now this is The Simpsons Hit and Run. Now The Simpsons Hit and Run does have some FMV on it, and the FMV on PlayStation games runs at 30 frames per second. And as you can see in the corner there, it is running at 29.97 frames per second, which is correct. Now this game also does drop frames. So the little frame number you can see in the G section, that's how many frames the game is actually running. and the V is the actual emulator. Now you'll notice that the actual game frame rate does drop in this game, and it does that on a real PlayStation 2 as well, which is why I play this on the Xbox. Much better. But even though this game is dropping frames, it is still pretty smooth. Just take a look at this.
You better run!
Take that!
That's not bad, is it? Now getting out of the emulation back into the menu does differ from emulator to emulator, but in most cases it's basically just pressing the two start and select buttons together and we get a menu which allows us to exit straight into the Pegasus menu. And see how quick that was? Not a problem. Okay, let's take a look at one more PlayStation 2 game. Again, we're looking at some full motion video here. This is Maximo 2, I believe. And as you can see, the full motion video is running at 30 frames per second, which is correct. And we get into the game. Now this game does run at 60 frames per second. And as you can see here on the cutscene, that's running at a solid 59.90 something frames per second, which is pretty much spot on. And in the gameplay here, you see it holds up perfectly well. Okay, moving on to some PSP. Now playing PSP on the TV is awesome, and this device allows you to do that. Now we're going to test out my favorite one for testing out these emulation devices, and that is Ridge Racer, because this will turn it into Skip City if the emulation is bad. But believe me, on this device, it's rock solid, it's super smooth and doesn't miss a beat. Just watch this. So as you can see, no stuttering whatsoever, so PSP emulation is a good one. Alright. But what about Sega Saturn emulation? Can it really handle that? Well, here is Radiant Silver Gun, and again, running like a dream. And let's check out a bit of 2D action with Mega Man X4. Again, not a single issue. Now believe it or not, this device can also play Switch games. Unfortunately, the only Switch game on here is the Contra Collection, but as you can see, it's booting it up just fine, super smooth, and we can get into the games without any issues. Okay, so here we are in the Emulation Station front end. So we've moved from Pegasus over to Emulation Station, and you can see we've got SharpX 8000. Now normally when they put SharpX 8000 on these type of devices, it never bloody works. But on this device, it does work. So again, we're starting off with the overlays, and you can see we've got the frame counter in the corner there. So I'm going to show you how to turn off the overlays. Very simple. You bring up the menu by pressing Start and Select. Okay, we're in the Retro Arch menu now. And Screen Overlay, turn it off. And then we go to Shaders, switch those off as well, and go back to the game. And there you go. No more overlays and no more shaders on the screen. Perfect, just as you'd expect it. And as you can see, Pac-Land on the X68000 is running perfectly fine. Now unfortunately, not all the emulation on this device is good, and it is not a fault of the device itself, it's a fault of the emulation core which is on here. For example, take a look at Jaguar emulation. This is Tempest, one of the easiest games to emulate on the device, and yeah, look at the frame rate. It's terrible. 19 frames per second there, and it's glitchy as hell as well. Oh, it's gone up to 50 odd frames now. But yeah, just watch this. So yeah, as you can see there, Jaguar emulation not too good. You can even play Nintendo 3DS games on this without any issues. So by default, the screen is kind of stretched horizontally, but you can change that to a vertical orientation, as you can see right here. Now we've got the screen, the playable screen on the bottom, but to be honest, I would rather have the playable screen on the top. So you can also do that by going into the options and switching them around, and it would look something like this. And as you see, that is very smooth. Now this is a 30 frames per second game, and as you can see in the frame count in the very top corner, it is running at 29 frames per second, going up to 30 frames per second. So again, pretty much as you'd expect. Now Dreamcast can sometimes be a bit hit and miss on these devices, so let's take a look at Ikaruga and let's see if we get any stuttering. Nope, it's absolutely perfect, and as you can see, the frame counter in the corner is a solid 60 frames per second. So yeah, even Dreamcast emulation is good, and because Dreamcast emulation is good, you can rest assured that Naomi emulation and the Thomas Wave emulation is also good. But what about Nintendo Wii? Can Nintendo Wii be emulated on this device? Well, kind of. Let's take a look at Sonic Colors and see how that handles. Now this game is a 30 frames per second game, and as you can see, it is running at the correct frame rate, but we do get some stutters every now and then, or maybe like brief pauses where it loads in data. It's doing something, I know that much. But every now and then, no matter what the Wii game is, you will get these little quick freezes during the gameplay, especially when something new appears on the screen. But besides those stutters, it does seem to work just fine. Although yeah, honestly those stutters can be a little bit annoying. Possibly if the emulation core is updated, then that could be an issue that is easily fixed. You can certainly see at this footage right now that the device does have the grunt to move Wii games at the correct frame rate. So there we have it, the Kinhank Super Console X5 Pro, an Android desktop box that does not suck when it comes to games. And as I already mentioned, You can stream all your videos, your music and so on to this device over your Ethernet, your Wi-Fi, or just connect a great big whopping hard drive to the side of it full of movies. It's up to you what you do with it. But yes, this does not suck, and I am actually surprised at how well this device functions. Didn't expect it to function very well at all, but it does. Links in the video description down below from the official Kinhank store over on Amazon, if you're interested in buying one of these. Until next time guys, keep on gaming and enjoy your games, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.